Step into fall at the Bruce Company's Autumn Artisan Fair on Saturday, October 25th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Located at Bruce Company Garden Center at 2830 Parmenter Street in Middleton. The fair will have booths featuring 50 local makers and bakers offering unique handmade goods. We're talking about one-of-a-kind gifts like handcrafted woodwork and jewelry and delicious foods like homemade fudge. Find out more and check out the whole vendor list at brucecompany.com. Madison Magnet, Dane County's premier young professionals organization's annual fete is coming up. The Magnet Fete is a night of fun and philanthropy with other young professionals in the Madison area. And they've got an exciting development to celebrate. After 2 decades of bridging connection, they're merging with the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce. Early bird tickets are on sale through November 7th. Tickets start at $50. And y'all, you do not want to miss this fun and fabulous night. Get your tickets today at madisonmagnet.org/magnetfet. This is CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Today, it's the Friday News Roundup, and the big news this week is that Wisconsin's primary food assistance program, Food Share, which provides SNAP benefits to thousands of Madisonians, is at risk of running out of funds amid the federal government shutdown. According to Way Forward Resources, a flagship food pantry and housing assistance nonprofit in the Madison area, up to 65,000 people in Dane County could be impacted if benefits don't arrive by November, aka in 8 days. Joining me now to get us up to speed on potential impact is Way Forward Resources Executive Director, Ellen Carlson. Ellen, welcome back to CityCast Madison.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so it's been 3.5 weeks of a federal government shutdown with no clear end in sight. Ellen, what's happening? What's the current threat to Wisconsin SNAP benefits?
Wisconsin Department of Health Services put out information earlier this month that there might be a lapse if the federal government shutdown doesn't end. There might be a lapse in getting food dollars onto people's EBT cards. And that usually happens right at the beginning of November. And so they also said that there's a possibility that even dollars that they had on their cards from, say, previous months that they haven't spent yet for some reason may go away. Of course, no one really knows what's going to happen. But people are worried, and we're actually want to make sure that the people who come to our food pantry who may also have food share benefits, as many of them do, know that this is going to happen.
And how is this threat landing? Like, what's the need like right now for Dane County's food insecure?
The food need is really high right now. I know that we've talked about this in the past. There's so many people coming to the food pantry already. Food pantries are really stretched thin. We have had 4 times as many visits as we did just 5 years ago. That's what's happening right now. So this is a big threat to food pantries and to people in our community. For every 1 meal provided through Feeding America's or Food Bank or food pantries, SNAP provides 9. So this is an amount of food that while food pantries like ours are going to do absolutely everything we can to make sure that people have the food that they need, food pantries just don't have the capacity to make up for all that missed November SNAP benefits or into the future. So there's a lot of work being done by food pantries to make sure that we can help people as much as possible, but we know that we can't do it alone.
Yeah. And just knowing, the folks that come in the beginning of the month and planning, like what would the impact of this be should we go over this funding cliff?
Yeah. So if this happens and truly the government doesn't do anything, there are other ways that the government could fill these dollars, right? These SNAP dollars. It's a very complex, as you can imagine, and nuanced situation. But if they choose not to do that, then what's going to happen at the beginning of November is that people are going to go to the grocery store and try and purchase the food that they normally purchase with those cards, and those cards are going to be empty. So you can imagine for people who are trying to, pay rent in a very expensive city to live in, to buy food for their families, where food costs are so high, that those food share dollars represent a very important piece of their budgets. So if they go to the grocery store and all of a sudden they don't have those dollars, they're going to have to find other ways. And even the Department of Health Services are really encouraging people, hey, if you are in need of food, call 211. which they should definitely do. And 211 is going to refer them to area food pantries. And that's why we are wanting to make sure the community knows about what's going on so they can support their area food pantries locally, but also just to make sure everyone understands what is happening right now.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, a lot of the folks that come to the food pantry use food share, but they're using it in addition, like they're needing additional food. I'll just share, last month I volunteered at a River Food Pantry benefit and heard their numbers of people in need. And it was a similar thing, just an absolute significant jump just this past year. Like it's been several hard years, and this year it's even worse.
Yeah, people in our community are struggling to make all of the pieces fit together, right? They live and work in our community and they deserve access to good food, which is what the food pantries are trying to accomplish. And it is what food share does, right? It allows people to go to the grocery store and to buy the foods that are healthy for their families and nutritious and make sense for the family that they, have in their home. That is the purpose of this federal program. And food pantries are very willing and want to step in and make sure that we can fill in those gaps, right? These are all supplemental programs. But, 65,000 people in Dane County are using food share. This is an important piece of our economy. These are people who are going to jobs every day in our community, and people need to eat to be able to show up and be healthy. And kids need to eat to be able to go to school and study and think and learn and be with their friends. Food and nutrition is key to all of that, and this is a key program.
Of course, there's so much uncertainty at this moment, but do you have any sense about whether or not our state will go over this funding cliff? Are you optimistic that the federal government will step in, or is it truly like, who knows?
It is truly who knows. I mean, we would like to believe that because we know there are several ways the government can solve this crisis, even if they don't end the shutdown, there are other ways this can be funded. We know it's a complex situation. So there are options out there to solve this problem and to make sure that there's money in this program for people to buy food. Really only restoring these benefits to people is what is going to make a difference to people. And so food pantries are doing what we can to get ready for what might happen, but we truly don't know.
Yeah. Well, appreciate you, taking the time to join us and get us up to date. I think the majority of Americans are really one major life event, like a medical emergency or a layoff, away from needing these benefits themselves. I know a lot of listeners maybe have never used SNAP, but who knows, So for those who don't rely on these benefits, why should they care? And also, what can they do to help if they want to chip in for the situation?
Absolutely. So it is very true that most people are very close to needing assistance. You can imagine that there might be a situation where, say, a federal employee isn't getting paid right now, and all of a sudden their family is used to this double income and doesn't have it right now. You can imagine people needing to fill in, the blanks in their own budgets, whether or not they're on food share or not. And so there's so many reasons why people come to food pantries. And so we want to make sure that we continue to be available for anyone who finds themselves in a situation where all of a sudden it's deciding to pay the rent or the medical bill or eating, right? And we are all much closer to that than I think we would like to think on any given day. So what can people do? There's a couple things they can do. Find your local food pantry. I think every local food pantry right now is thinking about what it is they're going to do when this happens. Or if it happens. And so supporting those local food pantries with dollars or actual food items is absolutely critical as we all prepare. And then also, we're following information from a lot of trusted sources like Feeding America, Feeding Wisconsin, FRAC, which is the Food Research and Action Center. They're a great place to follow too. So paying attention and getting involved however you can really can make a difference right now.
Well, Ellen, we really appreciate your time, and thanks for coming on CityCast Madison and, sending out all of the care and optimism that this will not happen. But thanks for getting us up to date.
Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity.
That was Ellen Carlson, Executive Director of Way Forward Resources. Coming up, more stories from Madison, but before that, let's take a quick break. Time for more of the Friday News Roundup. Just talked about the federal government shutdown's threat to Wisconsin's food share program, aka SNAP benefits. And of course, there's more news in the Hamlet. Joining me now to help break down the rest of this week's stories is our executive producer, Haley Sperling. Hey, Haley.
Hi, Bianca. Big news week.
Big news week. A little bit heavy, too. Folks will find out soon enough. And our newsletter editor, Rob Thomas. Hey, Rob. How are you?
I'm good, Bianca. How are you?
I'm pretty good. You know, it's tough stuff with the food share program and a little bit more tough stuff with an investigation. Haley, you've got the next story of the week. What's happening?
Yeah, so another kind of heavy story. The Cap Times dropped a bombshell of an investigation recently, and it's already having impact on the state. We'll get into that part a little bit later, but first, I want to dig into the story itself. The Cap Times spent about a year investigating this story. Investigative reporter Danielle Duclos is the reporter behind it, and she found that between the years 2018 and 2023, the State Department of Instruction investigated more than 200 Wisconsin teachers, aides, substitutes, and administrators who were accused of sexual misconduct or grooming behaviors towards students. And this is shocking because this information was all previously unknown to the public, and it is shedding light on something really scary about this story is the absolutely broken system that Danielle uncovered in this reporting. She interviewed 7 academics and advocates about how DPI investigates and documents educator misconduct, and each of these experts said the department's practices are inadequately protecting students. So high level, our state might not be doing such a good job when it comes to protecting our students. So the question is, how widespread is this issue? According to a federal report, 1 in 10 students nationwide experience sexual misconduct from educators during their K-12 schooling. So in Wisconsin, that would mean more than 93,000 school children. That's a very staggering figure. I'm curious to kind of get your guys' first takes on this story, on everything that I just laid out, because very scary. Rob, I know you're a father. You've had kids in school. How does that strike you?
Oh, it's literally unbelievable. You throw those numbers around and you think that can't possibly be true.
Yeah, I think my first reaction was to the 200, oh my God, it's so unnerving and so upsetting viscerally. And on second thought, am I surprised? Honestly, no. I'm a woman. The National Institute of Health says 1 in 4 women will experience sexual assault in their lifetime. Undergrads, there are terrible statistics there. So it is hard for me to think that K-12 school halls are an isolated utopia. And I was a student and have, I've witnessed and experienced things that I guess I can't say that I'm surprised. And I guess the silver lining in this is that a light is being shown on the issue.
Yeah. It's scary that this is kind of happening seemingly right under people's noses, and that the state is struggling to keep up with these investigations. So as part of her reporting, the Cap Times found that at least 44% of DPI's over 450 educator license investigations since 2018 have involved sexual misconduct or grooming allegations. And that number, that 450 investigation number, is a number that researchers say is likely a big undercount on these cases because, as Danielle's reporting uncovered, the tracking of these investigations is it's a mess. It's a lot of these school districts are keeping things on paper. Things are disorganized. There's no records of interviews. There's no clean records of how things were handled. And it's really messy. And so a really kind of scary bit is that DPI doesn't tell the public why an educator lost their license. And advocates say that this lack of transparency makes it a lot easier for educator misconduct to continue. That these people can avoid detection and it can happen again. And honestly, to me, We've seen this play out in other places. We've seen this in institutions as large as the Catholic Church. This investigation, it's giving spotlight for better or worse. When people get moved around and you don't know the details, when someone new comes into a community, you're expecting that they're a good person, but they might have a dark-seated past. And that's really, really scary. And so again, of the 461 teachers the state investigated, this is from a period of 2018 to 2023, 207 of them kept their credentials and could continue working with school children. So again, we don't know the details of these investigations because, one, is anyone keeping track of them? But also, this information is not easily attainable. It's not being made public. And again, it's that last part that really scares me, because after reading Danielle's article, and we will absolutely link to it in our show notes, it's part of a bigger series. They're releasing a few parts at a time. So there are 2 parts of the story out right now. It's really abundantly clear that the state and the school districts are really not doing an adequate job when it comes to tracking these investigations. And so why is that? Let's back it up for a second. So the Department of Public Instruction, aka DPI, is run by State Superintendent Jill Underly, who was, if you guys recall, recently reelected back in April for another 4-year term. And DPI has argued that they don't have enough resources and that lawmakers keep cutting their funding. So what's up with that? Are they right? Yeah. Pretty much. Like in the current 2-year state budget, lawmakers, according to the Cap Times, approved a 10% annual reduction, which is a cost of about $1.3 million to the department's general operations. So cut $1.3 million from previous funding levels. And Underly said that she specifically asked the state for money to modernize the DPI's online background checks and licensing platform, but lawmakers rejected that proposal. So, yikes, money, it's always the big issue. And to put this into even further context, DPI has only 1 full-time and 1 part-time investigator to handle the, on average, 113 investigations opened in a year. So that's staggering to me. That's wild to me. But it's this fight between the DPI for funding and the state lawmakers who are just saying, like, you should be able to do this, and they are failing to keep track of this. So Underly repeatedly denied interview requests for this story, but she did publish a letter refuting the reporting shortly after it was published. She called for the Cap Times to issue a correction to its reporting, but didn't actually outline any factual errors.
It's so heavy. It's so heavy. And I do think that there are a lot of different players that interact with this issue, that it's deeply systemic. And, I don't think the Department of Public Instruction would be able to completely handle this. It falls to schools. It falls to so many folks. But I think that the hopefully takeaway is that this is a pervasive issue. And of course, all of the issues that face our kids in school, K through 12, I mean, bullying, gun violence, like there's so much that needs eyes and money and attention on. And this is absolutely one of them. And I think, a lot of people are going to be surprised to see just how much so.
And as a journalist, I get pretty tired. This is a very familiar thing when somebody refuses to be interviewed. And then after the story is published, says you made errors and then does not say what the errors were. It seems to be all about saving face and covering yourself rather than getting the facts out.
Yeah, it's just not a good look all around. And above looks, again, it's truly the impact. Like, this is having impact on our students. Like, there was a case, I don't want to get too into the details, but, in Danielle's reporting, she talks about 2 students who experienced some horrific things at Madison East High School. And so this is in our community. This is in our backyard. This affects truly all of us. Like I mentioned at the top, there is already some impact coming out of this story. State Representative Amanda Nedweski has introduced legislation and called for an informational hearing to address student safety. So that's pretty big. Having legislation introduced as truly a direct result of this reporting is massive. So there's some big impact here, and hopefully cause for change. Hopefully it seems like more people are reading this story and are thankful for the reporting. So shout out to our local journalists, shout out to the Cap Times. We have had multiple Cap Times journalists on our show, even just this week. So we love them. It costs a lot of money to do good journalism. So I know we're always saying support us, but hey, toss your funds around if you can. Cap Times has a membership program. Go check them out.
Thank you, Haley, for that. I know how much work that took to share that story, and hopefully something good will come from that. So we are going to chart on, but before we get into any more news, we're going to take a break. Well, now that we've talked doom and gloom, there's a beautiful story. It's got some sadness to it, but also a lot of joy and celebrating someone who made an impact in Madison. Rob, you've got the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you've worked in a Madison restaurant, and I know you both have, if you've eaten in a Madison restaurant, and I know we all have, you likely felt the presence of Jane Capito. Jane was a restaurant owner who was responsible either directly or indirectly for literally dozens of restaurants in Madison, past and present, over the past 30 or 40 years. She opened spots that I know are big favorites of all of us, the Green Bush, Mickey's Tavern, which I know you've probably been to once or twice.
I love Mickey's Tavern, but Bianca honestly might love it more than I do.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, she's literally the Jane in Lazy Jane's Cafe. That's how big an impact she had in Madison, although obviously she was anything but lazy. And Capito died on October 11th at the age of 80, following a decade-long battle with dementia. And there were some really wonderful obituaries written by our friend Lindsay Christians in the Capital Times. And then Linda Falkenstein and Isthmus also wrote a really nice piece. I think she broke the news that Jane had passed away. Just going over, it was a long life and had a lot of impact. Jane was born in Salt Lake City and moved here from San Francisco in the 1970s. The story was she lived in San Francisco and would sort of dream about opening a cafe, couldn't really get it going there, and then saw like a note on a bulletin board saying, "Hey, I'm going to Madison, want to split gas?" And she was like, "I'm going and I'm staying." So she went to Madison. She got a job as a dishwasher at Ovens of Brittany, which is one of those restaurants I've, predated even me here in Madison, but I've heard about as like this incubator for all these people who would go on to start incredible restaurants like Odessa Piper, who started L'Etoile. And Jane Capito was no different. She started restaurants. There was one called the Wild Iris and Botticelli's. And then she bought the building that Mickey's was in the 1990s. And she described the place that was there as charmingly not charming. And she totally revamped it into the Mickey's we know today. And then a few doors down on Willie, she opened Lazy Jane's Cafe, which I think was maybe the first restaurant I waited in a long line to get inside because they're so popular for brunch. And I mean, just sort of the common denominator, she just created these great spaces. And I think of Lazy Jane's as a very loud and sort of almost chaotic place, but that was very intentional on her part to make it seem like a messy local spot where people just come and eat and good food and hang out and talk. And she had this very progressive egalitarian spirit. Her son, Ben, said she would have definitely been out at No Kings last weekend if she'd been around. And I think that's really reflected in those spaces, building these restaurants that are very Madison, very local, have this progressive spirit where everybody comes together.
I feel like Lazy Jane's is the restaurantification, I'm going to make that a word,
Sure,
of Willie Street, right? In so many ways. You have people of all ages coming in. Like you said, it's loud, but it's also this kind of controlled chaos, and everything you get there is going to be great. It's just a place where I think people feel really comfortable, and a lot of people probably feel like that is their spot. And I think that was something that clearly Jane kind of was able to cultivate in these spots like Lazy Jane's and Mickey's and even further. She definitely had an eye for making things special.
Yeah.
And homey.
And homey, yeah. It was like Mickey's, like you said, the same way. It's like this place must have been here forever. But no, it was, somebody thought about it and created it that way. She also had a big eye for talent and mentoring people who worked at her restaurants and encouraging them to open their own restaurants. That includes her son and stepson. Her son, Ben Alchill, revamped the Tip Top Tavern, which I went to recently. Great
Love
spot.
Tip Top.
Yep. Yeah. And also turned an old oil change station into Zippy Lube for great fried chicken. And then her stepson, Gil, opened Grandpa's Pizzeria and Gibbs, which we all went to once, I think, a while ago. And also Bandit Tacos, which is a favorite of mine at the old train depot. I mean, the list goes on and on about all the restaurants that might never have existed if Jane hadn't been there. I mean, it's sort of, I always go back to It's a Wonderful Life. You think about the impact that one person has, like our restaurants seem to be completely different if she had decided not to take that trip to Madison and split gas with that person. So
Yeah, catch a ride.
Yeah.
That's the 70s, man.
Yeah. So, I think the best way to honor Jane, go out to eat this weekend. Go to a local restaurant. Go to a restaurant either she was a part of or even one she wasn't a part of. Have a great meal and have a conversation with a buddy.
I love it. Drinks at Gibbs, maybe.
Yeah, let's do it. I cannot stay out as late as you guys.
You were a trooper,
I faded early.
I feel like even like waiting in that line at Lazy Jane's, if you can't get a table, getting one of the scones. The scones are
Absolutely.
iconic.
They're famous, people say.
They're famous. Yeah. It's really sweet. And you have this written down, Rob, but I'm going to go ahead and steal it. But yeah, experience something that she spent her life creating.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. Jane was a gem. And let's keep going on Madison Gems and turn to our neighborhood shout outs. I'll kick us off with our first. Hannah J. wrote in to shout out a cocktail bar that we all know. Quote, Cordial, a hidden gem on Park Street. Fantastic craft cocktails and super friendly staff, well priced, and a great vibe. Love this one, especially want to shout out, Hannah, CityCast Madison. We actually had our launch party at Cordial just under 3 years ago, and it was a hoot. And I just love that was formerly the Rustic Tavern and like a spot where, nurses came and hung out and just like really down to earth. And there's a lot to love from Cordial.
I think that's where we first met, was at Cordial.
It was, Rob.
Yeah. I remember that well.
Yeah. There were like 100 people there, and it was really good to be together like after the pandemic.
That's right.
I love that. I forever have FOMO for not going to our own launch party. I was out of town. Anyways, well, we've got another place to get drinks to shout out. This one is from Bailey Z, who is shouting out Liv's Drink Emporium in nearby Sun Prairie. She says it's one of the best coffee shops for Far East Madisonians. They have a great team working there with awesome baked goods and even better prices. And y'all know that we love a good deal in these days and ages. She says their peanut butter cold brew has become a Sunday morning tradition. And I am intrigued. Peanut butter cold brew are like 3 of my favorite things. So let's do it.
And I remember Rob loves peanut butter.
I do. I might be taking a trip to Sun Prairie.
Tasting.
That's right. Yeah. That sounds good. Yeah. And Tara D, speaking of coffee, wanted to shout out Lakeside Coffee House. Has a super friendly staff, delicious sandwiches, and their chai tea is my favorite. I also love the outdoor seating area. Cosign, and our producer Jay says to bring everything full circle, you can get Lazy Jane scones at Lakeside. So that's a great spot.
Another homey one, honestly. You can also sometimes catch some good music, like live local music.
Yeah.
They do all the kinds of things.
Yeah.
We're all drink themed this week.
Yeah.
All drink themed.
I love it. And if you guys like what you hear and if you want to give your own shout out, you can do it, right? How can they do it, Bianca?
They can become a CityCast Madison neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. It's quite affordable. It's like, $10 a month or $100 a year. And heck, our crew, our neighborhood's growing bigger every day. We're going to go out into the community and have events with y'all. We already have had a great event. And sometimes, you get to do this beautiful thing, like shout out a bar that you love that makes a difference in your life. And we would like that. So yeah, become a member at membership.citycast.fm. We're going to thank all of our neighbors who are already with us. Thank you so much. I do have one more story to round out this Friday News Roundup. It is a kicker in a more literal sense, and that there's been a lot of heat on UW-Madison's Badgers football coach, Luke Fickell. We've talked about this on a Friday News Roundup recently. Some fans have been calling to get him kicked off of coaching because it's been a pretty disappointing season. At the moment, Wisconsin ranks 132nd nationally. 132nd. That's crazy. And scoring this fall. So fans have been cheering at games Fire Fickell and acting up in the stands and protest. So you guys have seen some of that, right?
Yeah, they've been, I think because they're so bored, frankly, they've been taking their shirts off and like whipping them over their heads. Or like I saw like hundreds of students doing that at last Saturday's game. So
I think people just like need something to latch onto. Like you get one drunk guy doing something and then you get another drunk guy doing something. And then there's 400 drunk guys waving their shirts around. And like whether or not this has to do with their disdain for the team or for the coach, I don't know. Maybe these guys are just bored. I'm stuck on us ranking 132nd nationally. I cannot name 132 football teams. Like what?
We could with some time. How about 3 hours? We'll think of them. Yeah, there's a few in Tennessee. But I mean, let's be honest. Like Badgers have a lot of energy and pride about being in the Big Ten, but we're not feeling like a 10, if you know what I mean. Like it's not a good look. Some are certainly upset with the coach. But the news is that on Monday, UW Badgers athletic director dropped a letter to Badger fans saying, "I hear you," and quote, "Coach Fickell sees the potential in what this team can be, as do I, and that basically y'all need to support him and that it would lead to some change." He, this is the athletic director, said, quote, "The results of this elevated support may not be immediate, but we are confident the direction will be positive and long-term." So too long didn't read. I guess stay calm, carry on, equivalent of the cat poster hang in there.
I love the "it is cat" poster, but also like, I'm not saying he's had his time, but it's not like this is his first year on the team. Like I don't know. That's I'm not a football coach myself, but I can understand why the fans are angry. That's all I'll say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Rob, do you have any thoughts on the situation? Never say die, or is there a line?
Well, I'm not really a football person either. I do think
like,
a lot of times
there's his news.
Right. No, I do think a lot of times teams are too quick to fire coaches if they don't deliver. Like I do see the point that teams need time to build and you can't just turn around 132 immediately. But yeah, I think you think of all the money they poured into that organization. I think we covered basically, didn't they move the track and field team to make a new indoor facility? And, so there's a lot of money flowing into that team. And I think, especially students paying that tuition are understandably a little miffed that they're not getting more bang for their buck. So, yeah, I guess we'll see what happens.
It's a good point. And I understand that they're actually going to be investing more in the football team to try and help them out. So you better deliver if you're going to stay.
Yeah.
But in terms of never say die, I like that idea. I'm definitely can say it about this team. Never say die. Keep carrying on. And we're always rooting for the Badgers' success, even if we, call it sports ball or what have you.
Go Badge.
Go Badgers. Y'all, that's the end of our Friday News Roundup. Thanks for rounding up the news with me this week. Haley Sperling, appreciate you.
Go team. Thanks, Bianca.
And Rob Thomas, thanks so much.
Hang in there, baby.
That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm your host, Bianca Martin. We're produced by Jada Siri Ramos with help this week from Matthew Rogers. Haley Sperling is our executive producer. Our theme music is by Carl Christensen. Additional music this week by Peter Plaxa and 747 from Triple Scoop Music via Getty Images. Rob Thomas is our newsletter editor. You can get more news delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to Madison Minutes. And don't forget, you can support the show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Madison neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. And if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this podcast with someone who cares about the well-being of our residents here in Madison? Alrighty, see you back here Monday morning with more news from around the city. Until then, take good care, thanks for listening, and have a great weekend.